Tauka and you are watching World Report on NewsX World. Let's take a look at the top headlines of this hour. Sanai Takaichi has become Japan's first female prime minister, leading the LDP amid political scandals and coalition challenges. She leads a minority government backed by the Nippon Ishin Party and faces the challenge of unifying her party while stabilizing the economy. US President Donald Trump and Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese have signed a $8.5 billion rare earth minerals deal and have confirmed plans for nuclear-powered submarines under the AUKUS Pact. Both countries will invest over $3 billion in critical mineral projects. US President Donald Trump has warned Hamas that it will be eradicated if it violates the Gaza ceasefire agreement, while saying he would give the group a chance to honor the truce. Meanwhile, US Vice President VP Vance and his wife Usha have traveled to Israel as envoys Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner met with Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu amid Israeli accusations that Hamas is stalling on hostage returns and as reports of Israeli attack continues in Gaza. French President Emmanuel Macron has announced that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will attend a Coalition of the Willing meeting in London on upcoming Friday. The coalition formed by France and Britain in February aims to coordinate defense assistance for Ukraine. The University of Arizona have become the 7th institution to reject a Trump administration compact deal that has offered preferential federal funding in exchange for policy agreements, citing academic freedom as the reason. Football club Maccabi Tel Aviv has announced it will decline tickets for its Europa League match against Aston Villa on November 6th, citing fans' safety concerns after police in Birmingham classified the fixture as high risk. The decision follows political criticism from UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and efforts by the British government to reverse the ban on Israeli fans amid rising tensions and anti-Semitic incidents in the UK. Colombia has recalled its ambassador from the United States after US President Donald Trump threatened to raise tariffs and called President Petro an illegal drug leader. The move follows U.S. military strikes on alleged drug trafficking vessels in the Caribbean that has killed dozens, drawing condemnation from Colombia and human rights groups. Now we start from Japan. Sanai Takaichi has made history as Japan's first female prime minister, winning a decisive vote to lead the ruling Liberal Democratic Party. The 64-year-old conservative, nicknamed Japan's Iron Lady, succeeds Shigeru Ishiba amid political instability and repeated scandals. A protege of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, Takaichi is known for her hardline positions on security, immigration, and constitutional revision. Her path to power faced obstacles when longtime coalition partner Komeito withdrew support. She secured backing from the Nippon Ishin Party, forming a minority government. Takaichi now faces the challenge of unifying her party, stabilizing the economy, and managing coalition demands. Her domestic agenda includes tax cuts, spending to ease inflation, and controversial stances on social issues, as well as Yasukuni Shrine visits. Despite criticism from feminists and opposition groups, her rise is seen as a milestone for Japanese women. Takaichi inherits a party marred by scandals, tasked with rebuilding public trust while navigating domestic and international challenges. Now for this discussion, we welcome Professor Stephen Nagi. He's a professor at International Christian University, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Professor, for joining us again. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Now, what impact could this news of appointment of Japan's first female finance minister as well as Japan's first female prime minister have on gender representation and have effects on Japanese politics?
Well, Takaichi Sanae, as the first female prime minister of Japan, and having worked up through the ageist and male-dominated Liberal Democratic Party, wants to demonstrate that women can lead, and she is appointing into prominent ministries women, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy and Security, and we're likely to see other appointments. This is meant to send a message that women can do anything in Japan. But it's not the kind of diversity and inclusion, equality and inclusion messages that I think we've seen in other countries. She's determined to have a Japanese interpretation of gender equality, which again has a strong male-female definition with the family at the center, but to build a society in which women can break the glass ceiling and be top leaders, shaping the country's trajectory, its development, and its relations moving forward.
Right, and, but we also know that she will be facing a lot of challenges, including LDP's reputation. How do you think, how will she navigate through all this?
This is, I think, her strength as an individual, as a prime minister, is that, again, she's worked her way through the party. Ordinary Japanese and LDP members understand the challenges associated with the LDP, and she's demonstrated that through hard work and avoiding corruption that you can get to the top. I think that she's going to change the tone. It's going to be more difficult to do those backroom deals that I think a male-dominated Japanese society is accustomed to, and this may bring more transparency, more accountability, and I think better policy in many ways. The time will test, and we'll see what kind of results she has. But she's coming up to an important meeting with President Trump as he visits Tokyo. She'll visit APEC and again have a chance to engage with President Trump again, the new President Lee from South Korea, and of course President Xi. This is all wonderful opportunities for her to demonstrate her foreign policy chops, that she's interested in strengthening bilateral relations with the United States, ensuring that the U.S.-Japan alliance is the cornerstone to Japan's security. But I think she's also going to focus on other key partners, India, and building stronger partnerships with India, Southeast Asia, and to continue to engage in China while focusing on resilience and deterrence to deal with the realities of authoritarian assertive behavior in the Indo-Pacific.
Yes, or building on your answer, I wanna see your stance on China, and how she is known to be very hardcore against China. So how might this Prime Minister Takaichi's critical stance on China influence Japan's foreign policy moving forward, as well as regional stability in that area?
Well, listen, I don't think Prime Minister Takaichi Sanae is a hardline or a hawk on China. She's realistic about the China challenge. That means looking at the increase in defense, our military budget by the Chinese year on year, almost 10% for the past 25 years. She looked at the September 3rd so-called peace parade in Beijing with the display of the arms that are really targeting Japan and South Korea and United States bases within the region. And she's seen the assertive behavior of China throughout the region. She is not a hawk. She's realistic about the challenges of China's rise and what it means in terms of where China's moving going forward and what's the best way to deal with that. And it goes back to the formula that I think that was first established by the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, that you must engage with China. It's the biggest economy in the region, but you must have a resilient economy where you diversify your supply chains away from China. And lastly, you have to have strong deterrence. And that means that incredibly important partnership with the US and building new partners in Southeast Asia, Australia, Canada, and of course, India.
Yes, and now looking back at the influence that late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has on these two individuals. How do you see that they will carry Abenomics or his stance on many policies moving forward?
So in private, I think the late Prime Minister Shinzo Abe was a conservative. He was a very much pro-Japan, so perhaps the first leader that was a make Japan great again kind of leader. But he was also extremely pragmatic. Despite the tensions over the Senkaku Islands, which were nationalized by the Democratic Party of Japan back in 2012, he tried to stabilize the relationship with China and eventually tried to agree to 55 infrastructure projects in third countries with Xi Jinping. This pragmatism was a key feature of his diplomacy, but at the same time, he was realistic about China's rise, the importance of the United States in terms of Japan's security, and the importance of creating a multipolar Indo-Pacific region by investing in India, by investing in Southeast Asia, and building a layered approach to security, which includes trade agreements, the quadrilateral security dialogue, reciprocal access agreements with Australia, and subsequently the Philippines and the UK, and at the same time attempting to try and engage with the leadership that we can't change, but we have to find ways to shape its external environment to eventually shape its behavior.
Thank you very much, Professor Stephen Nagy, for joining us and sharing that insight from Japan. Now we move on to Middle East. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu has announced that he will meet with U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance during his upcoming visit to Israel on October 21st. Today, speaking to Israel's parliament, the Knesset, Netanyahu has highlighted plans to address security challenges and explore political opportunities with Vance. Let's listen into what he has said.
התרגשנו מביקורו ההיסטורי בישראל ונאומו ההיסטורי בכנסת של גדול ידידינו בבית הלבן מאז ומעולם. מחר יגיע בשליחותו סגן הנשיא ג'יי.די ואנס ואנחנו נשוחח על שני דברים, בעיקר שני דברים, על האתגרים הביטחוניים שעומדים בפנינו וההזדמנויות המדיניות שעומדות בפנינו. נגבר על האתגרים, נממש את ההזדמנויות.
The discussions will focus on regional issues, with Netanyahu emphasizing that he and U.S. President Donald Trump are committed to advancing peace agreements in the Middle East. The visit marks yet another step in strengthening U.S.-Israel relations amid ongoing regional tensions. Now we move on to our next news. The bilateral relationship between the United States and Colombia has entered a sharp period of tension, driven by aggressive rhetoric and policy friction between President Trump and Colombian President Gustavo Petro. Trump has recently announced it will impose higher tariffs on Colombia and stop all payments to the country, escalating tensions between Washington and Bogota. Speaking aboard Air Force One, he slammed the Colombian leader and stated the following.
They are a drug manufacturing machine, Colombia, and we're not going to be part of it. So we're going to drop all money that we're giving to them. It has nothing to do with them stopping drug production. And you look at the fields are loaded up with drugs, and they refine the drugs, and they make tremendous amounts of cocaine, and they send it all over the world, and they destroy families. No, Colombia is out of control, and now they have the worst president they've ever had. He's a lunatic who's got a lot of problems, mental problems.
Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro also voiced support for Colombia, denouncing Trump's measures. Experts suggest the escalating rhetoric could strain U.S.-Colombia relations amid trade and security concerns. Let's listen into the Venezuelan president.
Colombia sabe que somos uno solo, hermanos siameses, y lo que sea con Colombia es con Venezuela, y lo que sea con Venezuela es con Colombia, como me escribió un oficial militar de las fuerzas militares de Colombia hace 2 semanas. Si tocan a Venezuela, tocan a Colombia. Somos una sola patria, del corazón. Y no decimos por decir lo que estoy diciendo. Sé lo que estoy diciendo.
The Colombian Interior and Defense Minister Armando Benedetti has also defended Petro, highlighting Colombia's sacrifices in combating drug trafficking. This is what the leader has stated.
Lo único que ha hecho el presidente Petro es defender la soberanía de las aguas internacionales y que no nos gustan las tropas aquí en el Caribe. Y es lo único que le ha molestado a Trump. Pero hay otra cosa. Esto es una afrenta con el país. Aquí Petro es el que ha peleado contra el narcotráfico. Este es el país que más muertos ha puesto en la lucha contra el narcotráfico.
Now for this discussion, we welcome Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Doctor, for joining us again. Good to see you. Now, what role does this rhetoric from leaders from Trump and Petro play in shaping their bilateral diplomatic relations, and could U.S. criticism of Colombia strain its partnership with other Latin American governments like Venezuela?
I think this is a failure of the president of Colombia, because originally Venezuela was the target of President Trump because they are really smuggling the drug to the United States. And Colombia is the country who allowed the United States to tackle the drug issue. But in case of the illegal immigration issues, in case of the other issue, every time Colombian president tried to show the resistance against President Trump. And that's why gradually the tension has risen between US and Colombia. Finally, it has reached such kind of level. And now Venezuela side try to express the situation and try to ask Colombia to arrive. So that was the reason, because Colombia is inviting the attention from the President Trump, I think. So this is avoidable. So that's why the other Latin American countries did not show such kind of attitude to the President Trump. They have already avoided such kind of tension. But now only Colombia faces this situation. And in case of the United States thinks the domestic policy is very important. So smuggling to drug or illegal immigration, that is very important matter. And especially the American continent is a priority for under the Trump administration, especially from Canada and Greenland, and Mexico, or Panama, or any part of the area could be the priority of the Trump administration, and every time they try to cracking the resistance down. So that's why Venezuela could be the target for a long time, that their resistance against the United States and the smuggled drugs, so they are challenge against the United States clearly. But Colombia did not. Despite this, unfortunately, attitude to create new problems, I think, so it is avoidable.
And should these personal insults and aggressive rhetoric have a place in international diplomacy between allied nations?
Of course, it could happen if the attitude itself is challenging against the U.S., if the U.S. President Trump thinks. But in case of the other country, other Latin American country, hasn't shown such kind of clear challenge attitude towards President Trump. So, for example, Panama could be the target. So that's why the United States, President Trump say Panama's canal should be managed by the United States, or do not contract with China or something like that. But in case of Panama try to follow this and try to adjust the new situation. Mexico is also, of course, Mexico try to show that their sovereignty, that's true, the independent, that's true, but at the same time, in case of the drug issues, Mexico cooperation with the United States very deeply, and the attitude is very, that is a good friend of the United States, that was worked very well until now. So compare with this, if the president in Colombia choose a more friendly stance towards the Trump administration, of course it is avoidable, but his attitude looks like very strong challenging against the U.S., even if the Colombia is not the main problem for the United States. So that's why he invited, this is view from the situation the last 10 months. This is one kind of the suicidal policy, I believe.
Thank you, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay in this topic. Now, taking the feud forward, Colombia has now recalled its ambassador to the United States after President Donald Trump threatened new tariffs and called Colombian President Gustavo Petro an illegal drug leader. The move escalates tensions following U.S. military strikes on vessels in the Caribbean, which Petro condemned as targeting innocent civilians. Colombia's foreign ministry has said that the recall is for consultations and pledged to seek international support while defending the country's sovereignty. Petro has also criticized U.S. aid cuts and vowed to continue efforts against coca-growing regions. Despite limited success, the dispute has rattled markets, with the Colombian peso falling and trade with the U.S., its largest partner, now under scrutiny. Now we go back to our guest discussion with Dr. Satoru Nagao. He's a fellow at Hudson Institute, joins us live from Tokyo. Thank you very much, Doctor, for staying with us. Now, what are the potential economic consequences? Some of what we already see are for Colombia if trade relations with the U.S. continue to deteriorate.
In case of Colombia's economy or something like that, the political stability contributes to economy. So that is the reason how to restrain, how to limit the activity of the drug cartel is a very important matter. Despite this, Colombia lost aid from the United States cracking down the drug cartel. That is not a good situation for Colombia. So, and this is avoidable. I repeatedly said this is avoidable situation. So, tariff imposing Colombia is originally Colombia can avoid. And so that is the reason the foreign policy or the attitude should change to adjust the situation. And because this is not, this is meaningless conflict between US and Colombia, I think.
Right. Thank you very much, Dr. Satoru Nagao, for joining us and sharing that insight throughout our news. Meanwhile, family and friends of Alejandro Carranza, a Colombian man reportedly killed in a U.S. airstrike on a boat suspected of carrying drugs in the Caribbean, have expressed deep shock and grief over his death. Loved ones told that they are struggling to come to terms with the news, describing the incident as devastating and unexpected. The airstrike, intended to target drug trafficking operation, has raised concerns among local communities about civilian casualties. Let's listen into the family.
En ningún momento estoy de acuerdo porque si fuese así, como dicen ellos, porque no lo cogieron, o sea, lo cogieron preso o algo, o sea, si es así como las noticias que dicen, ya. Porque o sea, si es así, porque le fueron a arrebatar la vida así como se la arrebataron.
No, me cayó bueno, joder, mal, a todo el mundo, a la mamá, a los hermanos, eso, estamos preocupados por la noticia. Sin saber nosotros nada, pues. Supimos por la noticia el bombardeo ese que había por ahí.
Yo últimamente estaba...
Era muy humilde, muy familiar con la gente, era como si fueran familia de él. Tanto él como el papá, la mamá, todos son así.
U.S. President Donald Trump has said that he does not believe that Ukraine can win the war against Russia. While speaking to reporters during Australian Prime Minister Anthony Albanese's visit at the White House, Trump has also noted that Ukraine could still achieve victory, but he personally does not think that they will, emphasizing the unpredictable nature of this war. Additionally, President Trump has commented on the heavy human cost of this conflict, pointing to thousands of soldier casualties that have been occurring weekly in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. Let's listen in.
Well, they could. They could still win it. I don't think they will, but they could still win it. I never said they would win it. I said they could win. Anything can happen. You know, war is a very strange thing, and it's human lives, but the big number of human lives is soldiers that are being killed in the battlefield, anywhere from 5,000 to 7,000, sometimes more than that every single week. It's not even believable. It's It's a bloodbath. It's the worst since the Second World War, the worst number of people. And, it doesn't affect us in any way. We don't pay anything because now they pay us for the weapons that they get. The NATO is paying us for the weapons, as you know. It doesn't affect. I guess you could say that's a positive thing. They pay us, but I'm not interested in that. I did straighten it out.
These recent comments come amid Trump's Friday meeting with Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, where he called for both Kyiv and Moscow to freeze battle line assaults and halt the enduring war. Despite the tense discussions, Zelensky has described the meeting as positive, even though Ukraine has still not received the Tomahawk missiles that it had requested. Now for this discussion, we welcome Julia Kazdobina. She's a senior fellow at Ukrainian Prism, joins us live from Krakow. Thank you very much, Julia, for joining us. Good to see you. Now, how might this Trump skepticism about Ukraine's chances affect U.S. foreign policy and other allies' support for the conflict?
Well, we see President Trump changing his opinions depending on who he talks to last, right? So, and his policy is very unstable and very unpredictable. So I don't think it's going to change the policy of the allies because Russian aggression against Ukraine is a clear threat to European countries, and Russia continues to build up its military industry, and it continues to build up its military presence in the north of the country, in the newly restored Leningrad military district. So Russia continues to try to become a bigger threat to Europe, and it conducts hybrid attacks on European countries, such as sabotage and drone attacks. And there were recent violations, very blatant violations of European airspace when Russian military planes intruded into the Estonian airspace, and they stayed there for about 12 minutes and approached the Estonian capital. So it's a clear and present threat for Europe. So whatever Trump says, it's not going to change Europe's calculus. But the problem is going to remain to keep Trump on board. He claims that he no longer the U.S. no longer pays for it, and his statements actually make Europeans not so confident what the U.S. is going to do if Russia actually attacks one of the European countries, because NATO is to a large extent dependent on the U.S. role. The U.S. provides some of the crucial capabilities that enable NATO to actually respond to an aggression. So, but so far the war is going on at the Ukrainian territory, and Ukraine is relying more and more on its own ability to keep countering Russian aggression. So we're not sure what's going to happen with the U.S. policy. We're really hopeful that Trump is not going to change it really sharply, but it's definitely not going to affect either European or Ukrainian policy, because Ukraine is fighting an existential war.
And since there are looming topics of upcoming or potential Putin-Trump meeting in Europe, can Trump and Putin summit actually make a difference or make a groundbreaking or contribute to peace in Ukraine? And or does that risk legitimizing Russia's stance on this war?
Well, there's clearly a risk of legitimizing Russia's stance, that's for sure. And Ukrainian government now has a pretty difficult task of because Trump does not look at this war as the previous administration did, differentiating very clearly between the aggressor and the country that was attacked. And so there is a threat of that, but. In my view, it's very unlikely that this summit is going to bring peace closer, because Putin will try to continue to manipulate Trump by giving promises. I mean, we've seen this pattern repeat all over and over again when they talk about something and Trump comes out with some sort of a hopeful statement, and then Russia says, no, our goals in Ukraine have not changed, and they formulate those goals in very vague terms. And so, I mean, they then talk about root causes and denazification of Ukraine, which is a total nonsense because there's, I mean, Zelensky is clearly not a Nazi. So, like, what is it? What are they talking about? Or demilitarization of Ukraine, which basically means Ukraine's disarmament and leaving Ukraine defenseless is in the face of a possible Russian repeated aggression. So those conditions are definitely not acceptable for Ukraine because Ukraine is fighting for its survival. And since every single time Russia comes out and says that the conditions didn't change, I don't think it's possible that the summit is going to bring things any closer to peace. They have to change their position, and so far they have not. They continue the aggression and they continue building up their capabilities, and the Western countries are very slow in trying to limit their ability to continue their aggression.
Thank you very much, Julia, for sharing that insight. Please stay with us as we stay on this topic now. French President Emmanuel Macron has called for Ukraine and Europeans to be included in any discussions about the future of Ukraine, particularly in a potential meeting between US President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Speaking at a summit in Slovenia, Macron has emphasized that when the fate of Ukraine is on the table, Ukrainians must be present, as should Europeans. Let's listen in.
Sur la rencontre entre le président Trump et le président Poutine, je pense que c'est une très bonne chose que les présidents puissent se rencontrer pour discuter de leur agenda bilatéral. À partir du moment où ils discuteraient de sort de l'Ukraine, les Ukrainiens devraient être autour de la table. À partir du moment où ils devraient discuter de ce qui impacte la sécurité des Européens, les Européens devraient être autour de la table. Nous continuons d'avancer. La seule paix qui peut exister, c'est une paix robuste, durable, qui permet de répondre aux exigences du droit international et qui crée les conditions de sa stabilité.
Meanwhile, Hungary's Foreign Minister, Peter Szijjártó, has said that European politicians are not interested in whether a US-Russia summit in Budapest could help secure a peace agreement in Ukraine. He has made these comments following a European Foreign Affairs Council meeting in Luxembourg. Let's listen in.
Az európaiak nem arra helyezik a fókuszt, és nem is érdekeltek abban, hogy a budapesti békecsúcs találkozó valóban békét hozzon, és én a mai felszólalásokból arra kell, hogy következtessek, hogy az európai politikusok egy jelentős része nagyon sok mindent, sőt tőlük minden telhetőt meg fognak tenni annak érdekében, hogy megakadályozzák eleve ennek a csúcstalálkozónak a létrejöttét. Ahelyett, hogy örülnének, hogy újabb amerikai-orosz csúcs lesz, ahelyett, hogy örülnének annak, hogy egy újabb nagy lépés lehet tenni a béke irányába, mindehelyett az európai politikusok továbbra is a háború folytatását és meghosszabbítását támogatják.
Now we go back to our guest discussion with Julia Kazdobina. She's a senior fellow at Ukrainian Prism, joins us live from Krakow. Thank you very much, Julia, for staying with us. Julia, what are the consequences of these, differing European and U.S. priorities? As we saw yesterday, we saw Lithuanian, I think it was president or a minister talk about their opinion, and then today we see Hungary and yesterday we also saw Belarus voice their opinion or to try to mediate between Russia and Ukraine. How do you think this all is affecting this conflict?
I mean, when we talk about Belarus, I think it's clear that Belarus is a Russian ally in this war because Belarusian territory was used in the beginning of the war to launch